All right, it's 6 o'clock. Ready to start if you're ready. We have a quorum.
You're in
You're
charge.
looking at me?
You're in charge. You guys are,
You're VP last.
Yeah,
I could use it for the first
I
thing.
know, it's so exciting.
Call this meeting of the Budget Committee of the Coos Bay and Northwood School Board. Proposed budget meeting to order.
So the first activity is to appoint a new chair and vice chair for this year.
so we traditionally have the chair, a non-board member.
Yes.
I move we nominate Danny Stoddard as chair.
Well, thank you for your confidence. Certainly, there's a lot of people here with lots of experience.
I'll second.
Okay.
Nice try.
Yeah.
But are you accept?
I'll call the question. No, what else? I'll call it. So now you can ask what to
Well,
vote.
I suppose,
They made
nobody
me
told me
chair
that I
of
was
the
supposed to
ESB
lead.
budget committee this exact same way.
You're here to help me, right? Okay.
Well, this is your last deal. All you
This
have to
is
do
all you
is
have
ask
to
how we
do
vote.
is say,
Yes.
take a vote right now, and then you're done and he's in charge.
We weren't gonna have a vice chair.
We will.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't know this. I
No,
wasn't-
no, you're
No
doing
problem.
fantastic.
You're doing fine.
You were
Well,
great.
Okay, I will call the question. Can I have a vote? All those in favor of appointing Danny Stoddard as chair, please signify by saying aye.
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay?
One.
Okay.
Was there anybody who wanted it?
Congratulations.
Was there anybody who wanted it? though?
No.
Oh, I just want to make sure you wanted it because I never heard you accept the nomination. And so people could just nominate someone and then they're like, I don't have time for this. I'm not coming to this one meeting a year.
Well, I'm honored to serve in any capacity that is available. I'm new to this committee though, so I just want to acknowledge that. So I just wanted to be respectful of anybody else who might have preference, or if we need to use anybody else's expertise in place of my newness to the committee.
You were here last year.
I would-
That's all.
It's too late. You're nowhere chair.
Well, y'all tried this last year too. But I got out of it.
Now I'd like to take nominations for vice chair.
No, he does it now, because he's
He's now
chair.
the chair.
Oh, I don't, oh, you never did that.
Yeah.
It goes to him.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, yay.
Are you sure? Are you sure you don't want it?
Sue, you want to be vice chair? Sue, I want to be vice chair.
Sure,
Yay.
I would nominate Sue as the vice chair.
I will second that.
thank you.
Then you'll know what to do next year.
Yes,
So we have a nomination, we have a second. All in favor of Sue being the vice chair? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we have a vice chair.
thank you.
Okay, so I will take us through the agenda. Is that the objective here?
Yeah.
All right. So next on the agenda is a budget message from our superintendent. So I'll pass over to him.
And you all have copies underneath your budget agenda of that budget message.
Perfect. Yeah, let's launch into this. I think before I launch into it, a good thing for those of you who are online, we were talking about the scholarship assembly at Marshfield High School today, which was outstanding. If you've never been a part of that, almost $500,000 was given away to our students. And I haven't been a part of that process for a long time, but it really is one of the things that makes Coos Bay and Marshfield unique. I think when you're here, you don't realize it, but I've been to other places in other districts, and that is the exception. Not everybody is able to give that kind of money away to our kids. So just my hat's off. I know you guys feel the same way. The endowment, the commitment, the donors, the people. I got to talk to some people today I haven't talked for forever, for decades. And these are people who are just committed to our community, our school district. I mean, there's people going back to the 60s and 70s. So it's just really, really cool. I thought it was relevant because we're talking about money.
Justin, when I was on the school board in New Hampshire, I was also on our foundation. Now, it was a brand new school, but we were about 15 years in at that point. And we got excited when we were able to give 1 year $25,000
Yeah.
out for all the students. I mean, we were giving out $750 and
That's where
things
it starts.
as big
Yeah, that's where
scholarships,
it starts.
because that's where we started.
And also know that we actually gave more than 500,000 away today.
Yeah.
Because the scholarship from the Ford Foundation was not included.
Oh, is that right?
And that's
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
$80,000.
Yeah.
It's almost-
And the other money that's not included is the students who received some academic scholarships. It's not a part of that, athletic scholarships. I bet you if you started to total all that up, you probably are getting close to $1 million in
Yeah.
Marshfield students. So, yeah,
Yay.
super cool. Okay, let's jump into my message. I'm not somebody who typically wants to read things from a piece of paper, but I think it's important that I stay on script in terms of the overall message and priorities and vision and alignment where we're going. So I am going to, at the request of Marina, I'm going to read this. I think it's important. So as I write this year's budget message, I am reminded that school finance is not just about numbers. It's about values and priorities. Our community deserves more than just an explanation of how funds are being spent. It deserves a transparent reflection of our goals, challenges, and the shared responsibility we hold in preparing all students to graduate with a plan, enrolled, employed, or enlisted. For many years, the conversation, and I'm going to be transparent and a little bit honest here, has focused in Coos Bay has been about inputs, and inputs are important. They're really important, rather than evaluating and being transparent about outputs. We must balance the discussion between inputs and outputs. And I say the word balance, that's an important word. That's an operative word, but we have to balance the discussion about what we're putting into our system and what's coming out of our system. And we're getting better at that, but that's not something that has been a strength of ours. While our inputs are essential, we need to assess outputs to ensure return on investment in areas such as literacy, math, graduation rates, and post-secondary readiness. To improve outputs, the Coos Bay School District must maintain transparency about data and student outcomes and focus on high-yield practices. The Coos Bay School District is facing a new set. Now we need to get into some of our realities, our constraints, our assumptions, our uncertainties. Is facing a new set of financial headwinds: declining enrollment, the end of federal ESSER funds, uncertainty around federal funding, as you guys have, if you're following the news, rising PERS obligations, and overstaffing in key areas. These challenges are real and must be met with strategic, responsible decisions. Until enrollment stabilizes and the district begins to grow again, and it will, we will need to reduce staffing, and we're going to do everything we can. I know I'm editorializing, to take a humanistic approach, right? I've been in school district leadership long enough. It is not fun. It is the worst part of your job when you have to cut people. It's terrible, right? So we're doing this through a humanistic approach, but we also have to face the reality we're declining in enrollment. We have been losing students. Like most of the other South Coast districts, we're losing students. On a more macro level, the state of Oregon lost 30,000 students since COVID. Right? So until that increases, we're going to have to be very strategic in how we operate and prioritize. Through attrition, and ensure our systems are right-sized for sustainability. Despite these fiscal constraints, we remain optimistic and focused. This year has been about gaining clarity around our board goals, system alignment, instructional expectations, and areas for improvement. The 25-26 school year will mark our transition into a phase of internal accountability. I don't have the time or space to talk about that in terms of what's happening in the state of Oregon, but there's an accountability framework that is coming out. I would rather rely on internal accountability than state accountability, but we need to position ourselves and prepare for the new accountability framework. With systems in place, we must now trust but verify and ensure that resources, professional learning, and instructional strategies are not only aligned, but consistently implemented to drive outcomes. So then I go into the 4 board goals. These are the 4 that the board of trustees, the board of directors has tasked us with. These are, I appreciate their vision because they didn't come up with 25 goals. They came up with 4. And they were very clear about these are the 4 things we would like to see you and your team improve. Raise the academic expectations of the district. Report progress on goals and establish data systems. Investigate and establish the need for additional programs, and develop a long-term plan for the future of alternative education. The reason we're in this room is because of board goal 4. The reason you see the hallways being painted is because of board goal 4. We could not put students back in this building, but adults can be back in this building. We can convert Milner Crest back into a school for alternative education. We can expand it. We can have lots of options. And I'm hoping, I think we're all hoping, that'll attract families and that'll attract kids, and that'll be good for our budget. Key priorities: expand access to alternative education programs, increase student access to advanced placement and dual college credit courses. I really think that is an area we are seeing lots of gains in AP and dual college credit. I think we're going to be the flagship district on the coast in terms of early college enrollment. Reposition leadership to support K-12 alignment. There's been a number of changes there that have happened. Preserve resources for summer program and credit recovery. Ensure students have access to a guaranteed and viable curriculum, high-yield teaching strategies, and MTSS supports. Prioritize, I already mentioned this, internal accountability over external compliance. Ensure the safety and security of our students and staff. I actually think I'm going to put a plug in here, Board of Trustees. I think that needs to be one of our board goals. I think there's some things we need to do to ensure safety and security of staff and students. Advance our work towards increasing post-secondary readiness and inclusive, responsive instruction. Looking forward, we must begin thinking in 3 to 5 year financial windows. A multi-year approach to budgeting anchored in our shared vision will allow us to gradually and responsibly realign resources, stabilize staffing, and better serve the evolving needs of our students. I submit to you a balanced budget for the 25-26 school year and encourage us all to continue the conversation about how we can align our finances, our budget with the future we envision for all students in Coos Bay. In the end, all students in our district deserve great teachers, principals, and schools by design, not chance. Any questions, or are we ready to? Well, I'm not the chair. You're the chair.
Order.
Important information.
Are there any questions for Dr. English? Okay. Well, thank you for that message. We will now go into a budget overview provided by our finance director. Turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So you'll notice that this presentation is very similar to how we operated last year. This will go over highlights in terms of what the budget committee actually approved, which is major fund and major function. It does not get into the weeds of what is included in that function, but it just essentially will compare prior year's adopted budget to our current proposed budget. My plan is to go through that and then be available for any questions you have related to the budget that I would assume you guys have had a chance to hopefully review.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Will you just, last year you went over the highlights of changes. Will you
Yes.
be doing that again?
I will.
Okay.
And that is, so there's a lot of changes that have even happened since I created.
Okay.
The day after I was telling Dr. Ainsworth, the day after I created the budget document, all 40 of them, we had some additional administrative changes the next day. And so they're just, as soon as you do the budget, it's always changing. So then let's start with the state budget implications. And again, this changed today. The revenue forecast for the next biennium is not from the state of Oregon today. It's not good news in terms of overall budget legislatively. In terms of the first year of the new biennium, the current governor's budget that is proposed is $11.36 billion. We, as school business officials, have been very confident in this $11.36 billion, and it is what this budget is based upon. the governor prioritizes education. This is where she prioritizes a good chunk of funding. However, in the new revenue forecast for the upcoming biennium, Oregon, since March, is now projecting $840 million less than they were expecting in March. So that is obviously the entire budget, not just K-12 education, but the reality is we will see some of that decrease. We are hopeful that their June estimate is just really incorrect, and we're gonna hope that the March comes to fruition. We are also going to assume at this time that the 11.36 billion state school funding level will be adopted. However, as Dr. Ainsworth mentioned, the statewide enrollment is down, and part of the legislative conversation has been if you have 30,000 students or less in Oregon, why would you need the same funding level? And why would you need the same funding level plus an extra? It's effectively $1 billion additional for state school funding in this upcoming year. Our local enrollment since COVID is expected to decrease 10% over the next, well, now it's 9 years. So when we did the 2024 enrollment survey and data analytics, we are expected to decline another 10% up until 2034, unless we have a significant economic change in our community, such as a work project. Again, the state revenue forecast is projecting $800 million less just for the general fund. The additional $40 million decrease that they're now projecting is directly tied to the corporate activity tax, which is what serves and funds our SIA grant. The high school success allocation is also down in the governor's budget because she is highly prioritizing early literacy. And so her early literacy funding allocation went up, but her high school success allocation went down. So we are projecting about $100,000 less in that grant, while anticipating, assuming that this $11.36 billion budget is adopted, we are anticipating getting an additional $200,000 for specifically K-3 literacy. So you'll notice that there's a significant increase in the early literacy grant. That is with the assumption that this budget will pass, because that would be crucial to our students and the governor's accountability model that is heavily focused on third grade reading and third grade scores. So then we are also looking at a student enrollment number as of September 30th. We keep saying that our students are declining, but we pick a data point consistently September 30th. Kids have gotten into school. They effectively decide whether or not they're going to stay there for the semester. You'll see that this year we were right about 2820 in September 30th of 2024, and we're projecting to be back down to 2800 in September of 2025. So only about a decrease of 20, but that's significant in terms of our overall budget. The ADM per student is close to 11,000. So it's a significant chunk of budget for our smaller district. So on to the general fund overview. So on the right-hand side, you will see the adopted revenues and expenditures for last year's budget, the 2024 fiscal year. And on the left, you will see the current year, well, the upcoming proposed revenues. So this is what is included within the budget. I cannot make the colors more legible. I'm so sorry. So you'll see that last year, the local sources went from 23.66% of the adopted revenues to only 8.72% of our general fund revenue projection, whereas our state sources are going to be only increasing by 1%. So essentially, the general fund revenue is only projected and budgeted to increase by, let's see how my crazy notes are up here, 500,000 is the general fund increase over next year. It is only 1.2% of an increase over our current budget. This is not sustainable in terms of our staffing costs are increasing at a significant rate, in terms of our just our insurance carrier notified us of an 18.5% average increase on our rates. Our general fund revenue is not increasing at the level it needs to maintain our current service levels, even with the governor's budget increase of $1 billion. Because we don't see all of that. Our state school fund is only increasing approximately $800,000. Some of that does belong to our pass-throughs, our Lighthouse School and our Resource Link charter schools. The district's portion, what we will actually receive is about $700,000 additional. But we are eating into our ending fund balance consistently, so those two things do not neutralize, and our revenues are not maintaining the level needed to continue in future years. So as Dr. Ainsworth mentioned, we're looking at like a 3 to 5 year financial view, while also prioritizing board goals, which has been to maintain our staffing levels, maintain our low class sizes. We are quickly coming to a place where we can no longer do that to the same extent, and there will need to be reductions through FTE, hopefully attrition in a humanistic way as people leave and move to new challenges. But also as we look at our current districts, and there are new positions this year. So as we talk about decreasing FTE in certain capacities, we are also looking at what is our current needs of the district, and there are new positions, so you'll notice, while also making cuts other places. So this is the overview. Proportionality, nothing is significant, but there is no significant increase in state revenue, which is our largest resource.
Can you go back real quick,
Yeah.
just a footnote, a factor, so you're always looking when you do a budget, what are the unknowns, what are the assumptions, right? And you don't have a crystal ball, but one of the factors that is a little bit unpredictable for us is we are hearing that federal funding next year is flat, which you guys know doesn't keep up with inflation. So it is a cut. It's the year after that we're not hearing great news about federal funding, right? It's a small percent of the pie, but it's still worrisome for us because a lot of our EAs, their positions come out of federal funding. They don't come out of our general fund. So,
and you'll see that when we go through special revenue funds, because we are predicting and projecting flat funding. And so it doesn't currently make me panic too much in the general fund in terms of revenue for federal funding, but when we get into special revenues, that's where we will see a lot of reduction in our revenue because of federal funding. I don't know if they'll get Title I or Title II or Title VI or IDEA funds after this next fiscal year. We currently have this coming fiscal year's allocation because the federal government is typically a year ahead. But we have no answers and no idea. So at some point it'll need to be talked about. Do we absorb some positions into the general fund? Do we reevaluate our models? Those are the sorts of things that we're looking at next year, but hopefully there will be some more firm data as well. This was a challenging year in terms of our budget creation. So in terms of budget summary, general fund requirements. So as I mentioned, the budget committee, they purely approve and adopt by major funds and major function, because we have well over 50 special revenue funds. It gets very complicated to break it down separately. We do one major general fund, we do one major special revenue fund. When looking at the general fund requirements, you will see that this is by major function. So instruction is currently 51.97% of our general fund budget, whereas next year it's increasing to 56% of our general fund budget. This is primarily where teachers are coded, classified staff, the staff who are directly involved in instruction, the 1,000 function, they're in the buildings, in the schools. Support services, last year we adopted the budget at 41.32% overall, and next year it's staying at 41.2% of our overall budget in the general fund. Support services includes things specifically administrative salaries, maintenance, capital projects, curriculum and instruction. The support services to the actual instruction is what's included within here. And then the other instruction, the other functions are nominal in consideration to our general fund. the bulk of our general fund dollars goes to instruction and support services. The biggest decrease is this last year, 4.39% that was allocated to other uses. Those are essentially transfers. You'll notice that it's down to 0.41%, because in order to balance this budget, we did have to go without doing a capital fund transfer, because we have a rather excessive beginning fund balance in those funds. We have chosen to, again, maintain as much staffing as possible, and to forgo that next year. So we are only doing the 2 required transfers, which are the turf reserve, and we've created an athletic reserve, because we have large projects for athletics that needs to be done that are not part of our regular capital projects fund. So things like the bleachers at the high school, things like potentially turfing, the softball and baseball fields have been discussed, but we don't ever have enough of a money pot just sitting in athletics to do that in 1 year. So we're building a reserve so we can do that when the time comes. So this is what will be hopefully approved by the board, are these major functions, but it is helpful to look at it as a project. So for the Oregon PBAM, which is the Program Accountability and Budgeting Manual, the 100 and 200 functions are salaries and benefits. Last year in the adopted budget, that was 60.49% of our general fund budget. Next year, it's projected to be at 77.74% of the general fund budget. It is a significant increase. There are reasons to that, and I will get into that in my major changes. It is both due to being in a negotiation year for both unions. We are currently actively negotiating with the CBEA and OSCA unions, as well as this year, we have utilized the ESD for the Adaptive Life Skills Program. And beginning next year, we have created and are going to be running the Independent Skills Center for our students. And so those costs that we used to pay as essentially an AP check to ESD is now going to be paid by salaries and benefits, which is 90% of that increase. It is because it's about 1.5 million is what we have previously paid as a purchase service, and now it's falling under salaries and benefits. They will be district employees rather than ESD employees. So it is a significant increase, and between negotiation, first rate increase, and then taking on our special education model, we are looking at the salaries and benefits being 77.74% for our general fund, with purchase services being, last year it was 23.58% of the budget. Next year it's only budgeted at 15.25. Again, that's because that 1.5 million check that we wrote to ESD is being moved to salaries and benefits. Other than that, the other objects are staying relatively consistent because we don't have any large expenses in there. The majority of our general fund is staffing. So this is just helpful to see, but we don't adopt like this. Yes.
Are employees able to be in both PERS and Social Security?
Yes.
That is the case in all states, though. That might be.
Yeah, it's not the
Case,
case,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
And does anyone have any questions on these overviews at this time before I get into changes?
When you talked a little bit on the previous slide about our athletic fund and the reserves there, and just for folks, I'm just curious about things like the roof that we've talked about at Sunset and other capital projects that are a priority. That's separate from those, and the funding can't go towards like the roof or other things.
Correct. So there are effectively multiple pots of money within the capital projects funds. There's the general building capital projects, which is what we have historically done a transfer to. It's all sitting in that fund 450, which there's breakout up here. That's the fund that had the excessive beginning fund balance because of the ESSER. I was able to move expenses out of fund 450 into the ESSER fund to claim that down before it expired. So we had an additional $2 million sitting in capital projects. So that money is set aside for buildings, for things like Milner, things like Blossom, things like Sunset Roof, but cannot be used for athletics. And then we are building reserves for the athletic project fund, which is Fund 451, and there are separate transfers that go into that. Yes.
And a lot of it got spent because we put a new field out there a year ago.
So that is a separate.
Okay.
There's even an additional
There's a
athletic
separate-
reserve. I think that's Fund 463 is the turf reserve fund. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but we'll get to that. But that we consistently put $80,000 to every year so that in the next 10 years, when we have to replace it, it's sitting there because in the past, we've had to take out a loan in order to do that.
But is it 10 years? Because didn't we have a 5-year extension and that's gonna come up in 26?
No, it's a new field. It starts when the field is put in. So it doesn't matter about the old. It has to do with the density of it.
Sure.
So they do a test on it to see if it's a
And
LA.
when was the test?
We do it annually. We do it annually and we are projected to still, they're saying a 10-year lifespan still. And so we put it in last year, and so that 80,000 is set to still pay for the turf reserve. So then we will go to the special revenue fund. So this is where you'll see our grants, both federal and state. You'll see our student body accounts, our special reserve funds, our MHS scholarship committee fund, as well as food service and special projects. So again, we budget by major fund and major function.
I'm like, come on over here. Where's your name tag?
Oh, well, Jen's
I
not
was
here.
like, this. What? It's right here.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm not gonna say anything. I was like, Kyle's here. I was like, I thought he was online.
Thank you. No,
Well,
thank
I thought you were online too.
You are making our forum, so thank you so much for showing up. Sorry, Bailey, I didn't mean to take over.
So special revenues, again, you budget by fund and major function. That's the authority of the budget committee. And so we budget all of our 200 funds as one allocation per function. You will see the breakout. I do provide you with that all separated. So you can review it, but in terms of what we actually approve to then bring to the budget hearing and adopt is just by major function. So that's what's here. This is a challenging fund to look at because it is so variable based on the grants that we have. So last year we budgeted $3 million for ESSER funding, knowing that we would be spending a good chunk of money at the beginning of the year, but that it would not ever continue. In this fund is Title I with IDEA, all those federal funds that we are anticipating flat funding for. Per the OASO board, we are anticipating flat funding, but the reliability of it moving forward is questionable. So everything in here is really up to, if we get the grant funding, then we will have the allocation to expense. So there are new grants in here. You'll see that early literacy grant increased because of the governor's budget allocation going from 206,000 to 460. We budget assuming 460,000. If the budget number from the governor doesn't go through, then we still at least have the allocation to spend it. This is challenging to estimate because it is all dependent on the grant requirements, but we do our best. So I am anticipating next year instruction will be 51.61% of our grants. Support services will be 23.68%. Enterprise and community services, 19.89%. And then contingency at 4.82%. So this will give us the ability to spend all the grants we believe we will receive with some freedom to reallocate depending on grant narratives like adopted, because we have to submit separate grant budgets to the state and the federal government. And if they pass them, great, they will be in line with this. And if they don't, then we can adjust this within appropriation transfer. On to debt service funds, you'll see that last year we had debt service requirements of a little over 5 million. This year it is decreasing because our final first UAL bond payment is due in December. Wonderful news for the district. Right in time for our PERS rate to skyrocket, but they will not offset each other, but I am really hopeful that this will make our life a little bit easier in balancing. So this year we are proposing almost $4.75 million in debt service. That is the GO bond, and then the one final payment to the PERS UAL. And then on to capital projects. Again, we budget by major fund and major function. So within this 400 fund is all of the ones I mentioned before, 450, athletic reserve, turf reserve, Crown Point School, when we sold $60,000 of land a couple of years ago and spent that, those all have separate funds. And so we are proposing that support services will receive 39.09% of the budget. 40.61% will be for facilities acquisition and improvement. And then 20.3% will be set for contingency because we're not doing a transfer next year budgeted. We want to make sure that we maintain some ending fund balance for things like sunset roof and the high school library roof, which I'm told there are holes in, and the things that are deferred maintenance that realistically we would need a bond to do all of them. And instead we're going to chip away at them as much as possible, but we have somewhat competing priorities when we are maintaining as many staff as possible. We are not able to do as many transfers to capital projects. So this is kind of competing priorities. And what we focus on in building this budget is what is going to help kids be successful. That was our focus in making this budget. So major changes. There are a lot of them. Some of them are reflected in the budget and some are not, as we made some changes last week. So at the K2, specifically East Side, we reduced in this budget 2 FTE from teaching staff. That was due to class size enrollment. Their enrollment has been decreasing. They've had significantly low class sizes. Madison made those attrition and reductions this year, and so East Side is doing them next year. This will make our class sizes a little more in line with the class size recommendation that is in our certified contract. We are reducing 1 FTE of administrators, which is the Director of Early Childhood Education and Coordinator of Support Services. So we have had openings for an Eastside principal rather than hiring staff. We have moved Amelia Ed into that principal role at Eastside, and Carly Ainsworth is moving back to Madison as the principal. And we will not be replacing that position at the district office. We will rather be absorbing the work that she is doing above and beyond taking care of Little Pirates within the rest of the class.
Is she full-time in Madison?
She will be full-time at Madison with additional time for Little Pirates, because she'll still maintain those two salaries. No, it will all be within her salary. She just may be coded to the preschool commons grant for a portion. We have added over 15 new roles due to the new Independent Skills Center that we will be creating. So those are new to us, but they are staff that we have typically had in our building. They just worked for ESD in the past. We have created a full new model, and so we are hiring over 15 new roles. It's really hard to quantify because it will always depend on how the model is actually functioning, but approximately 15 is what is included in the budget. There was a reduction of a 0.5 library clerk at the high school, a reduction of 3.5 FTE assistants, and a 1.0 FTE at the attendance advocate, I believe, at the high school. However, yes.
Sorry, quick
No,
question.
you're great.
Just curiosity. I'm not sure if you guys have already mentioned, where is the new Independent Skills Center?
It's essentially replacing all of our current life skills programs. So there will be one at each building.
Each school.
So it's not like a center.
No, it is a center within each building.
Each school will have.
Like the classroom?
Yes.
Okay.
And the new model is far more inclusive, and so by looking at it as a center, that's the center for their building. But the hope is that they will not be in the center. The hope is that they will be in the general classrooms, and that is just a central location for them at the building.
So it was an ESD program, right?
Yes, yeah, I,
And-
yeah.
You know, they did their best, lots of challenges. Eventually we decided these are our students. We need to take a shot at that.
And in particular, they each had a room in buildings already.
Right.
Yes.
Correct.
And the reason, to be fully transparent in this meeting, I know some of you are on the ESD budget committee. In full transparency, when we received the quote and pricing for next year, the price was raised by 48% for each slot. And so we physically could not pay the amount of money. We couldn't afford it. It was taking our price of adaptive life skills from 2.6 million to 3.8 for the exact same services that we're already receiving. And we were able to build a full new model, including an administrator to run that full program for the same amount of money as we are currently paying the ESD. But that gets back to, it used to be a purchase service where we were writing a check to ESD, and now those are our actual staff.
But you have to build into the person and the
Yeah.
expense. which is
Exactly.
a
It
lot.
is, but it is still under the cost of the ESDs.
The 3.8,
Yes.
but not the 2.6.
And then from a management standpoint, it was really challenging because they were in our buildings, they're our students, but they're not our employees. And so when something happened, we have no control, right? And I don't want to throw the ESD into the bus. They're really good partners. They work hard. We're going to have some of the same challenges they had, if I'm being honest. But we would also, when things went wrong, we would take blame because parents don't always differentiate. They just see those are Coos Bay kids, right? Those are your teachers, and they're not. So we were still dealing with the problems, but no ability to help fix it, right? So there's an efficiency just from it.
So now we can take the blame. So
Now we have to take
We
the
are
blame.
already legally responsible for the actions, and
Yep.
by us taking them on, including all of the related costs, including an administrator, it's only 70,000 higher than what we are currently paying.
well, there's a little bit higher than what we're currently paying, but not as high as the 48% increase.
Correct.
Right.
So
So, yeah, so,
it was kind of make or break. Like we literally could not have had a balanced budget without taking it on, and we had to make those decisions.
some of these,
the CRA coordinator. That is the ISC coordinator, and I believe, I don't know, did I include?
so that's a
names
new
on that?
administrator?
So there will be an ISC administrator. We were already paying for that through the ESD.
Right,
They
right.
maintained
But
one.
we haven't hired that person.
We have,
Oh,
Allison
okay.
McNeil is going to be,
What?
yeah.
I love her.
She'll be coming from ODE.
She's a lot of
No,
experience.
she's coming
That's a
back?
Big job.
It's a big
She's
job.
coming back.
Big job.
Okay, but I thought I heard you say we were paying too much to them.
We had a 48% increase.
Yeah.
So you were saying that once the 48% increase went into effect, that would have been too much?
Yeah.
It,
Okay,
yes, we could not have budgeted for it. Currently, we are paying 2.609 million. The cost of the new program, including the administrator, is a 2.69 million. So it's about 72,000 off. I can get you all my calculations, but it
But
is-
with more control, and
and
there are kids.
a really, and a full-time administrator, because at ESD we're only paying for a portion. While also having to send legally
She already
our
gave her
sped
notice?
director. What's that?
I said, we're public. Does she already give her notice and everything?
Yep.
Okay.
It's done, yeah, it's done.
I'm so excited.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
great news
So,
for us.
It is great news for us. Another thing that we added is an FTE of an administrator at the 712 campus. So campus-wide, we are going to have a curriculum, instruction, and assessment coordinator. Again, it's not adding because we are reducing an assistant principal that we are currently paying at Sunset. We currently have 2 assistant principals at Sunset, but we are reducing one of those and we are adding
So it's a
it's
repurpose.
a repurpose.
Yeah.
Repurpose.
Because we've made significant staffing changes. I don't know if everyone's aware, but Dr. Ainsworth has Kara, Davidson will be moving to Sunset. Shelley will be moving to the junior high as the assistant principal. Kyle will be moving to the principal of the junior high. And Floyd will be moving into the CIA coordinator role for the 712 campus. Our priorities as a district are to really work on academics and increase our graduation rates, increase our scores, involvement in AP and dual credit courses. And by having an admin in charge of those things, our goal, I don't know if this is like, you're requiring AP seminars?
Graduation, yeah.
Yeah,
graduation
so
requirement.
we've implemented new graduation requirements that require AP courses. We are adding more AP courses, so this is allowing us to work on that board goal with the staff that we already have, so we are repurposing. We moved one teaching position from the high school as a staff member was leaving. We absorbed that position, and we are adding a 6 to 12 grade online teacher. This again is in relation to the board goal of expanding alt ed. We currently have one online teacher and she was responsible for K-8. This is allowing us to have an additional teacher who is coming back to our district, who already knows our programs and will be running the 6 to 12 online program for us. It will be a huge, what's that?
We already have that one hired too.
Yeah, is that public?
Well, kind of.
Well, okay, then don't say anything.
No, I'm just looking at our audience because they're all smiling. We've added a 1.0 FTE for a graduation coach at Destinations Academy. Again, board goal is to expand alt ed. We are increasing our enrollment numbers in there. So we currently have a cap of 50. Kayla always goes above and beyond that cap to let more kids in. We are increasing that by almost double next year. We're going to allow for more slots at Destinations. But they will also need FTE to operate their program. They currently only have 4 FTE, including their administrator. So we're adding an FTE through the high school success fund.
Where's the online teacher going to be positioned? Over
At the district office.
Okay.
I'm Milner. I'm
Destination.
sorry. I mean, it's gonna take me a while to get used
Okay,
to
I
that.
was like, that's here.
Yeah, well, only right now, me. I'm the only office here.
If this is gonna be the
This
district
will.
office, so they're gonna be here.
At
They'll be at
Milner
Milner.
Press.
They'll be at Milner.
Okay.
With the other alternate, yeah.
We are also adding a 1.0 FTE of district-wide safety and security. This is a repurpose. Over here, we've absorbed this 1.0 FTE for the attendance advocate, and we are repurposing it to a district-wide safety and security coordinator. I think after the student, there was a lot of consideration as to what our protocols are, what our emergency operating procedures are, our communication protocol for those things, and that was already a high priority of the district to add something like this. And we had this unique opportunity where somebody who's already really familiar with our district and knows our processes is retiring and is going to start working for the district in this capacity.
School that's good.
How many,
Yeah.
how many students are enrolled in Destinations?
Currently 60,
Huh?
currently 50.
50?
Yes,
And how many actually attend? But last
50.
year it was really low.
they have done a great job. They have all 50. Their slots are all full. They have a waiting list, I think, a significant.
And they attend pretty well.
Waiting list.
Mhm.
And they're like 85%.
They have 3 teachers and a counselor.
Okay.
And this will add a graduate.
I think I have an idea, but can you explain to me a little bit what the new Independent Skills Center is and how many kids are involved in that?
Yeah, so it is effectively our new special education classroom for our
Okay.
highest needs students.
Intensive needs.
Medically fragile.
Okay,
Not our middle learning center kids.
It is our
okay,
highest needs, whether that be IEP or
A nurse.
any of those things.
okay.
We, this year, are purchasing 66 slots from the ESD, so I would imagine we will stay consistent with that number, because those are, we purchase a slot per kid that will be in the program. So I would imagine somewhere between 65 and 70.
Okay,
So yes, it is a significant cost in relation to the number of students, however, they are most needed.
sure.
And there are grants that somewhat offset the high cost of those, which would now we can better access those resources, because if the ESD is paying for all services, sometimes it's really hard to track the high cost to each student, and now we will be able to manage that a little better in-house. And then, is that,
You said you had an idea.
No, I said, I think I have an idea of what
About
it
like
was,
what-
but I wanted to make
I
sure I
thought you were
wasn't
gonna
repeating
post
it.
something to
I
Marina.
know.
I was like,
I'll take any and all I can. And so then lastly, in terms of significant FTE changes, you'll see that we have added an FTE of a music teacher at the 3-6 level. This was in lieu of the 3.5 FTE of a PE assistant. So those PE assistants, oh, I'm sorry, I went back on. The PE assistants were paid for out of the student investment account. We, as a district, cabinet level, determined that it would be better use to have a full-time music teacher at both sites. So right now, we have one music teacher who spends half his time at Mount Palma and half his time at Sunset. It's really challenging. And we're working on building these really great musical programs at the 7-12 level with Mr. Cruz and Mr. Aker. But if they don't have the 3-6 bandwidth, then we're not feeding into the program, we're just feeding into. And so this was a district priority.
Can I talk about that real quick? I think it's really important to think more macro about music. Music is one of those programs. One, it's great for kids. And in our conversation, all elementary students should have access to music. That's really important. We wish they had access to everything, but if we're going to prioritize music is critical. We have to create a pipeline and have really, really strong music programs at the high school. And the reason why is sometimes parents will choose a high school because of music. That sometimes is the reason they're choosing your high school. And we have the bandwidth and we have the capacity, but what we didn't have is we didn't have the vertical alignment and the access. So by the time the kids got to high school, we had a really strong music program. And so we think with that K3 access in the long game, we're going to have strong music programs at Marshfield, and hopefully that attracts more people to our district. I don't say that with exaggeration. There are parents that will pick your high school, and he knows this, because of your music program. Just like they'll pick your high school because of its football program or its basketball program.
I think even more importantly, early music is a great thing for academics.
Yep.
Yeah.
It teaches the brain how to deal with things in different ways. And
Yeah.
I absolutely think it's the right thing to do if you want to raise academics throughout the system and make a program. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So with that comes choices and, right?
So with the added, so I've got 1.1 FTE for music. So in addition to our music teacher now, so we'll have one at each school. So is that going to be, because he mentioned kindergarten through.
They currently at, I know Madison, they do their own music, K2, and so this will just be a 3-6 teacher at
Okay.
Sunset specifically.
So
But they do, part of the models they want, like at Sunset, they want to start getting into Madison so they can start attracting those kids, right? But most of their focus will be at Sunset
And,
and Millicoma.
and I don't know if any
Get
of
their
you
hooks in.
have met our new music teacher. He's new this year. He is
He's amazing.
wonderful, and
That's
the
great.
students love.
She's got
class.
great innovative.
I am
ideas.
going to be pushing over the next couple of years for expanded art classes
That would
for
be-
kids
yeah.
also, so.
Good to know. Thanks.
So when we
Everybody should have access to music, I 100%
Yeah,
agree.
art
Yep.
and movement. So with the 3.5 PE, those were just assistants.
So, yeah, so that came, from what I understand, it was not here at the time that they were hired. It was an SIA, 1 year essentially test to see if it benefited the schedule better during COVID when they needed to split apart classes. They were having the PE assistant effectively run the second class, but they're not running 2 classes at once anymore. So this PE assistant typically handles the black club and recess duty. And a lot of times subs for teachers who are not in the building that day, they tend to pull this person because it is the easiest position. They just fill duties. So,
And then on there, we also, so, and I shouldn't have said just assistants because assistants are crucial. And then we've got our halftime library clerk as well. So all of that together made the music teacher happen. Is that correct?
no, those were just the listing of the reductions.
So it's not
we
correlated
did
to the-
specifically the music teacher in exchange for the PE assistants specifically.
And so were those absorbed as well, or are those RIFs?
They are RIFs in lieu of other positions. So we ripped the attendance advocate, but then we added the safety and security coordinator.
So how many attendance advocates do we have now?
We have none.
What?
Well, currently we have, they're partials at each building. So I'm trying to think their FTE, but they have one full-time at Marshfield. They have a portion of one, I think it's like 0.6 at the junior high. And that got shifted to straight security. So the FTE went to security because that's what the person was already doing. And then we had 0.2 at one of the kinder through 2 schools. And that has been, I don't know if they're working on a name change, but that person is still within, we didn't rip them. We've absorbed that FTE into a different role. And then we have one that works with a specialized population through a grant fund. And I believe their title is just being changed to family coordinator, family advocate, something along those lines. We still have all the same people. They just moved into new roles, from what I understand.
And their focus will no longer be attendance.
I think their focus, the intention is that it would be what they're actually doing already. They're already working with
Like
the
getting
families
kids to
to get
school.
the kids to school. And so just changing the title, but I'm not HR, so I don't know that for 1,000% fact.
So the
That's my
improvement of
understanding.
attendance is the projected outcome, but they're doing it through the activities.
That's my understanding, yes, because they're,
Their safety.
From your lips.
well, at the junior high, the needs were actually a security person at the junior high. We had a 0.36 of them, and the other 0.64 or something was attendance advocate. We moved it all to security because that's what they're actively doing. And then at the high school, we have additional support staff in there who can do some of those duties like calling for attendance, where the attendance advocate then could be used for that safety and security position, which will be based out of Marshfield and doing a lot of the similar tasks.
So we'll probably see the job descriptions align and have a lot of those attendance advocates, and those things are public, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's my best understanding of them. But again, I'm the money lady and not the HR. So, other changes, decreasing in state funding. All of our allocations were significantly increased in 24-25, the current budget year, because the state put out a moratorium on carryovers. And so this year we were allowed to carry over money into this fiscal year, but we cannot carry over any more grant funds after June 30th, unless they are federal funded. So SIA, High School Success, SF, all of the big grant funds that we pay for a lot of staffing out of, we cannot carry over after June 30th. We can only spend the year-to-year allocation of. But in this year, I had carryover, so all of our allocations looked inflated because we had last year's carryover and all of this year's allocation to spend. So, yeah.
Can you prepay for services with that?
No.
It has to be actual expenditures during that period.
Yes, and received.
Oh. Okay.
It's a fun time.
Mhm.
And also no supplanting.
And we knew that ahead of time.
We did know that, and so what we have done is put as much one-off expenses this year that we would not continue to run on. So we don't want to move a bunch of staff in there because then we can't continue to pay for that. What we did rather is additional intensive staff trainings in August last year, and we allowed anyone to come. We paid their hourly rate plus a bonus to complete and pass the trainings. That came out of the state funds. We're doing the same thing in June this year. We purchased some curriculum. We did some one-off expenditures, but it was a significant amount of allocation in the budget, which now makes it look like our allocations went significantly down. You will see an increased transfer to the athletic reserve capital project because we determined as a district, it is a priority that we're going to need to replace things like bleachers. That they say every year, hey, we need to replace the bleachers, but they haven't been setting the funds aside to do that. And so we have built that in $100,000 this year to set separate in a athletic projects reserve fund. So when we really do have to do the bleachers, it is sitting there. It won't be in every year, but we are currently working on the bleachers, so it's
Where are the bleachers at?
In the
Individual
high
school or just the high school?
just the high school auditorium.
No,
No,
gym,
gym,
main gym.
yes, main gym.
It's there.
Auditorium.
They don't come out nicely anymore, so you don't get them fixed. And they don't meet the state requirements for having railings.
They're 20 years old.
And really
Yeah, they're over
safety
20.
Yeah.
wise,
They were, I put them in new, but it was towards the end of my career.
Oh,
I've been
really
out
old.
for over 20.
yeah,
I've been out for over 20.
yeah. So, they're, before this year, it was projected to be about $250,000. And so my goal is to set $100,000 aside for the next 3 to 4 years to be able to afford that. But it felt like we were constantly chasing this. We need to replace the bleachers, but we weren't setting money intentionally aside. And so that is, you'll see that now. Federal funding, unless otherwise communicated before the budget hearing, it's flat, which is then in turn a cut because we have to absorb those additional costs into the general fund. Our increased PERS costs, so the PERS UAL side accounts expired this year. So statewide, most every district in city and government's PERS rates were increasing. Ours increased at 7.4%. All of our staff at some point become eligible for PERS. You have to work 600 hours a year. Once you hit that, you're eligible. And so we pay a good chunk of money, about 35% of our salaries. We then pay in addition PERS costs.
Okay, so wait a minute.
Yeah.
I want to go back to this PERS and social security thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do we make payments to both of them
We do.
Yes.
for employees?
Yes, we do.
Are all employees able to join PERS?
Yes, as long
After
as
they
you
reach
meet the
the
hourly
hours.
requirements.
Okay.
Mhm.
So it's an equally offered benefit to have both of them.
And
Okay.
Required,
even
it's a
the
required
subs.
benefit.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
required.
but,
Even if you're subbing, yeah.
okay,
Reach that hours.
okay.
Currently, in both of our contracts, we pay the employer portion as well as the 6% PERS pickup for our employees. That is what we currently pay. We are currently under negotiations, as I said, with both groups. We don't have a defined COLA or cost package for next year. So what is included within the budget is my current ceilings that I've been authorized by the board, what we believe we can afford. Summer grants. This is the one piece of good news I have is that we did make it to the eligibility list for summer learning. So last year we were on the wait list. We did end up getting it, but not until about June or July. This year we were off that waiting list and we were eligible to apply, and we did apply, and we secured our $442,000 for summer learning. That is great news. Our kids look forward to that, and the academic benefit of that far outweighs the chaos that comes in June when you find out you get it. Moving forward is included within the legislative budget, and so we will know our allocation much earlier in the year and can plan a little more strategically. And then, as I've mentioned, our liability insurance coverage average increase for the state is 18.5. That could be higher based on the number of claims that you've had, but our insurance provider cannot tell me the exact amount, so we want it to be 18.5%. And then, I forget, I'm in charge of this. And then we just go to budget discussions and questions. Last year, I did the presentation, and then all of you have looked through and had questions or were wanting to know about more specific things. We didn't go line by line in the budget. If you want me to, I can talk for hours. Or you guys can feel free to ask questions, and then I will hopefully have answers for you.
Sure, thank you. Well, we've had a lot of questions already, so I hope that's helpful to everybody. And we've all had the budget in advance, so I'd recommend not going line by line.
Thank you. Last year there was
unless someone wants to, but we've all had it in advance. And so if there's any more questions, I have a couple.
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably the best thing to do at this point and discuss it. Does everybody agree to that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Question.
I know Debbie's got some.
I was interested in maybe what some of the people are going to say first.
They go
Last.
Public comment
They
after
go
this.
next.
Yeah,
Yeah.
next. Okay. Well, I'll start us out then. So McKinney-Vento is 0. Is that because of a change in federal funding for McKinney-Vento or different allocation
It
for
is
that
a
type of money?
separate grant. So this is the ARPHCY, and that
Oh,
was
okay.
a, that was an ESSER COVID related funding.
Gotcha.
So if it says ARPHCY,
Gotcha.
we don't need the allocation, it was tied to ESSER, but our regular McKean Dental grant, we do have funding.
And it's probably put up in here somewhere.
Yeah, I can't tell.
Okay, that's okay. So,
I think it's like 297.
okay, so that money's good then.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And, well, so we're in discussion, so it's not a question, but just a comment. I love the sentiment about adding music and just that, what was discussed about that. Just, it's inspiring to me as a community member and a parent and an uncle. So I just love that our schools are going in that direction, you know, having a balanced approach. Question about the change of the officer position to the safety and security coordinator.
Yes.
Was that office of Scoville, was that previously funded by Coos Bay Police Department?
No.
That's funded by the school district.
So it's two
Okay.
separate positions.
Okay.
So we currently, this fiscal year, we have a contract with the city for an SRO on campus. We pay that.
Sure.
It was approximately $110,000 was our contract this year. That is still in the budget for next year. So we would have whoever replaces Officer Scoville as the SRO, that's employed by the Coos Bay School District. Officer Scoville is retiring, has retired, and he is working for the district in the other.
The new position.
Mhm.
So then, but then we'll still have an on-campus
Yes.
officer.
That's all, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Can I add a little context on that too?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's in today's day and age, you have to have somebody. When I got here, I asked lots of questions. Who does this? Who does that? And I said, who's in charge of safety? Everybody's in charge of safety.
Mhm.
All teachers, all staff, all administrators. However, in today's climate,
Yeah.
we all know what our worst nightmare is. You have to have somebody who that's all they do.
Mhm.
That's their brain. That's how they think. They think about protocols. They think about drills. They think about training. They're thinking about our manuals. They coordinate with the police department, the fire department, the state emergency people. Obviously, this is, tsunamis are something that we think about here. Earthquakes are something we think about. And our worst nightmares is school shooting. So there are some gaps in our system in terms of safety. And a lot of our safety expertise is concentrated at the high school. And that's a hole because we have elementary schools. And we need people there who are doing ALICE drills and fire drills and earthquake drills. And they're not only being proactive, but they're fixing things as they go. That is too big of a job for a principal to be thinking about all the time, right? Or administrator, do part of your job is safety. You're always thinking about it, but you can't get into the granular details and manuals and drills. So we really need someone who that's an improvement. That's why I'm going to suggest that's actually needs to be one of our board goals as we talked about in summer. And Officer Scoville has lots of experience in that area, and he has connections in the state and locally in the city and county. So it's just too important not to have somebody doing that job.
And we realized some more holes after our December tsunami situation. Was it December? Yeah,
Situation.
it was December.
Yeah,
It was
a long time ago now.
We realized. the
Long
holes-
time
I
ago.
know, it feels like it.
It does feel like it. At that time, we had already known about the need, and then when that happened, the need was even magnified. Like, who's communicating with parents and who's coordinating the response to parents, and what are we telling people, and where are the buses from Madison and Sunset going, and all of these things that Officer Scoville have background knowledge on, and also figure out how to coordinate the best way. So
So this is like future planning and current planning versus like on-site security that the other officer will be, doing.
Yeah, he will be, the way I would differentiate is the SRO is definitely more responsive services and the safety security is more planning.
Right.
Yeah.
So I know we always talk about systems and not necessarily basic people. People always, they'll play into it because you have their skills and ability. So what is the ongoing plan? I mean, Scoville is committed to how much time and do we have?
it is
a pipeline?
10 months, I think is.
It is, yeah, it's a non-represented position, 10 months. It's essentially a at-will contract, so it's just year to year, essentially. If it was determined we didn't need something like this, it would be discussed at another budget meeting.
Just like, wonder what we do after school.
Well, we had it posted, before we knew that he even may be interested, and we did have in-district people who may have been interested in it. So that's not incredibly my concern. My concern is that we have really great systems, and we would find something to build those with. what we have.
His goal is to build the system. What I asked of him, I said, when you decide you're done in 5-6 years, is you have a book and you transfer that book to somebody else and say, this is how we do safety and security in Coos Bay, make it better. Right now, that is not the case.
Yeah.
So
And we are working on that, to be fair, district-wide. So when I got here, there was not a book. When Taylor took over special education, there was not a book. And our goal is that those systems are not dependent on me.
people,
And if I'm not here next year, you guys can have a budget committee with a complete budget because it is not dependent on me. And so we're building that system out,
That's so
not just in safety.
shocking to me that there's not systems in place.
There are, but they're in people's brains and not.
Well,
always
that's
on
not,
paper.
that is not in place. That doesn't count.
we're getting better at that.
We're getting
Yes.
better.
We're working
So
on it.
getting these systems, but I'm gonna say, like, from a budget standpoint too, it's not only having the system in place, but anytime you bring in a new employee, whether you have a system in place that helps tremendously, training that person is a cost dollar. I mean, there's a dollar amount with that, training someone new. It takes time, it takes energy, it takes money. Yep, so absolutely.
Can you talk to how the change in state law about unemployment has affected the budget also?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah.
Yes, in that you will see significant increases to unemployment costs. We are in an interesting situation where all of our classified, some of our 10-month classified staff are now eligible for unemployment during summer breaks as well as any break of time in service. So summer, spring break, Christmas break, they would theoretically be eligible for that. We do not currently pay a tax rate because that would be implied on all of our staff, that we'd be paying on all of their salaries a specific rate, but we pay claim by claim right now. So historically, we've only budgeted about $50,000 for unemployment claims because we didn't have the number of staff eligible for those claims unless they really were no longer working for us. But having the staff who are going to return in some spring or fall or whenever that break in service is, having them eligible for unemployment is going to skyrocket our unemployment costs. And so right now it's quadrupled. But as more staff utilize the benefit they're entitled to per state law, it will likely continue to increase. And so I've put a number in there based on an average of how many claims we receive and how often we pay those out. But it will continue to increase. Yeah.
A school district doesn't have to pay into the system, they can self-insure.
Yes.
What's the breaking point where that kind of pisses off?
I don't know yet because the state rate changes.
You haven't hit it.
Yeah.
We haven't hit it. We have not hit it. It would, I'm guessing in the next 3 years, we will move to the state tax rate. And it's somewhere around 2.5%. But to pay that on all of our salaries is still significantly higher than to pay claim by claim at this time.
Shit, I can't remember when the mill hit it during COVID and kind of had that same scenario and got
Yeah.
like a 1 million, you were expecting that.
I am not anticipating that this year.
Mhm.
But we're doing a cost benefit analysis each year to see if enrolling is worthwhile. We get a small discount the first year, but we would not get a discount the second year. And so it would be dependent theoretically on negotiated salaries and what that percentage might look like.
Other questions or discussion?
So where are we on K-3 level with the assistants? And what have they lost some?
No, they have not lost any assistance. Well, the PE assistant, we absorbed in every school. So there was one at Madison Sunset.
Like you say, it was subs, and we know how that happens daily.
Yes, yeah, I know.
So how's that gonna fall out then on the staff in the school?
Well, we are not in the place that we were 2 years ago. In full transparency, we don't have nearly as many unfilled absences as we have in the past. I think it's hand in hand with the fact that like now when you post a position, we're getting more than one applicant for roles. We're also getting more than one subs.
Yeah, the fill rate's better.
The fill rate's better. We've also proposed some things in negotiations that will hopefully cause less staff to be out during work days, student contact time, or something like that. And so realistically, we're hoping that we will go back to the contract language of you don't hold a PE assistant because you're the only person who make the least amount of harm or disruption to the day. So we'll be getting a separate sub, not one from within.
What's the budget for sub?
It's somewhere around $200,000. It's a lot. It's spread throughout, so it's really hard for me to do that, but it's okay.
And I know if they can't find a sub, they'll combine classes. My little kindergartner so we went to Mrs. Ball's class today.
Sure.
And I said, what movie did you watch?
Oh,
Right, so what kind
Well,
of education
because
is
you
that?
know, if you got two classes
can't.
Well, at
together,
this time,
I'm feeling for the teachers.
Oh.
Well, but sometimes
right
they'll
there.
move them.
they'll
They'll
split
spread
up.
them out.
And to be frankly transparent, those class sizes, kinder at Eastside, are about
Small.
17.
They're
So
small.
to split up a
I
class,
wasn't
you're
worried.
looking at closer to like 22, 23. So we have not had even above the recommended class size. And
I
that's
was,
on the
yeah,
days we split
they
them up.
watched Wall-E, so it was educational, and that's a really good movie. So it cut out towards the end, so that was trauma, so we had to watch it at home. So
So, and how are we gonna help the teachers when the student slaps them? And when the student runs down the street and they can't get them? What, I wanna concentrate more on the K-3. Because if they slide through there and get to the middle school and the high school, we're not gonna have enough room if we talk alternative school.
So in terms of behavior
Yes.
plans, Justin, do you want to speak to that? That's a little outside my financial.
Exactly.
So, I cut off.
But in turn, it has something to do with it.
Yeah,
I think we have to have, and we could share this, we have to have a real conversation about class size. We probably should have had it, maybe even consider it in the budget, in this presentation. We have extremely small class sizes. We have to be honest about that. We have to be transparent about that.
Which that's great, but if you have one student that interrupts daily and daily. and
Yeah,
daily,
no, I agree with that. I
refuse,
just,
slams the door.
Yep.
Points the gun finger wise. So we have to do something. We gotta start.
we have not reduced any FTE in any of those roles.
Right, they still
And-
have days, there, folks in there that are, and they have really great support systems for the families, and I've got a little guy that clears classrooms and has behaviors. So I know at least through Eastside, and I'm assuming Sunset, they were at my school last year. So I know that they work really well together with the families and the students. And we've got staff that are surrounding them when it comes to behaviors and emotional regulation and so many tricks. But what I'm nervous about is I'm with Debbie on when those federal funds run out, us having a plan preemptively to not cut those EAs, to figure out how we can keep them in there, because you're right, if we don't have that support surrounding that, even if we have a small classroom, if you've got one student that turns over every desk, you could have 10 students in a classroom you can't teach.
And that is our goal in this next year when we kind of determine the certainty or lack thereof of federal funds, how we can make some other changes. But if the reality is we lose IDEA funds, then we're going to have to make cuts in the general fund because those students have to be served legally. Whatever capacity that looks like, I don't know, but what I know is that we have the student behavior resource at each K-6 school, and that's funded out of SIA, not out of any of our federal funds. I know that we have behavioral EAs who are funded out of SIA, a state grant, not federal funds. We use federal funds to provide Title I EAs, so reading supports typically, and IDEA special education. And in the past, we have not historically utilized those funds on staff because we paid for that staff out of ESD service credits. And so there's not as much of a cut that would need to happen if we were to use something like IDEA funding, because one, you have to provide it, and two, we haven't historically utilized all of that funding. Well, I'm being in full transparency of what our
We need to
plan
know.
is
Yeah.
moving forward, and
Because it's gonna be too late. I mean, it's-
The positive, here's the positive. We definitely see more behavior in the younger grade, for sure. Because they're going through a major transition, right? They're getting acclimated, they're in that structure. And what we see over time is by the time they get to middle school and high school, we see fewer behaviors. So initially it is a little bit of a shock, but as they stay with our teachers and our support staff and our schools, the behaviors become less prevalent. I'm not implying there are no behaviors at the middle school, high school. There always is, right? Kids are kids. They're going to do things. But I'm really confident that when they stay with our staff in our elementary schools, they're ready for secondary. We have lots of support staff. We probably need more training. Behaviors are challenged because it's not just Coos Bay. I mean, with our superintendents every 2 weeks, and they all talk about behaviors. It really is somewhat of a societal issue.
And we are operating the additional training, so that intensive week last August was, I think, highly beneficial to staff on how to handle some of those behaviors.
But where would that child go? Where does that child go at that minute?
I don't know if it's in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, we have other areas they go, right? It just depends on the school. Sometimes it's with the counselor, sometimes it's with the dean of students, sometimes it's with the principal, sometimes it's a change of placement and we're teaching partners. Can you take Johnny for a few minutes so he can decompress?
But I'm thinking K through 3, there's not a dean of students.
There is.
There is.
There's a dean, we have a dean at each Madison and Eastside. And then
And
we
we
have,
call them that instead of vice principal?
yep, they have a dean of students. That was effective last year. Because they are teachers on special assignment, they're non-administrators, they're specific.
Do kids know that if they get reported to the dean of students that that's not a good thing? Or at that level, they don't even know?
I don't know that.
Well, we're not
But I
gonna
know
tell
that
them they're bad. A kindergartner.
Why?
That's not best
Maybe that's
practice.
part of the problem.
We have.
That's when you get into capital
That's when
punishment.
we have,
We have two
yeah.
really,
There's more mistakes.
we have two really qualified deans of students. We have Erica Staley at Madison, and we have Rachel Lindsay, who I believe was a SEL teacher before and is really great at those behaviors.
We don't have bad kids.
We don't.
I just want to be really clear.
Yeah.
We don't have bad kids. We have kids who have challenges.
Yes.
We don't have bad kids.
We haven't
you.
We have
capped that.
kids who
We don't have
struggle,
that kid down.
they
They
struggle,
were never bad.
and they have challenges, and they have
Yes.
constraints, but they're not bad kids.
And we have staff.
I just have to say that publicly as someone,
I keep snickering because my stepson went to Marshfield for a couple of years and he was definitely a challenge and he came out of it a lot better. So I think you guys are doing something.
I also.
God knows it wasn't parenting.
Also,
Yeah.
the
Problem all the way through.
change of the said
In
model
his office.
will also change a lot of the attitudes towards all of the behaviors, because all of our kids are all of our kids.
Mhm.
And our teachers are going to be the ones dealing with all of those kids on a day-to-day basis. And you can't just say, it's life skills class, the ESD can handle that behavior. They are our kids, and not all the behaviors come from the life skills program, let me tell you. But I think there's a new flux of ownership in there, all our kids, and the behaviors are all ours. And I think the DN students have been really successful this year. We're adding one at Sunset with the move from Kara from Eastside to Sunset. Part of it is also there's a lot of behaviors at Sunset, and so we're moving our really, really skilled dean of students from Eastside over to Sunset. Her name's Rachel Lindsay. She gave a really great budget or board presentation last year. If you get a chance to watch it, she's wonderful at behaviors. and I think it will make a ton of difference. And then we just posted her position that you saw yesterday.
And I just want to say thank you, Justin. Not saying that kids are bad. I know that behaviors can be very challenging. And that doesn't mean that because a child goes to the dean or to the principal, that it's a reward, because they will let them know that that behavior was unacceptable. You know, we don't, hit our friend. We're not going to say, you're a bad kid because you hit so-and-so. But they use the appropriate language, person-centered language that's the child's level. And the kid knows that this is not acceptable and there are consequences without saying, you're a horrible human being. So
We did not absorb or reduce any behavioral related positions within the budget, if that was the concern or question. Sorry, we got public.
No, it's all good. Any other questions before we go to public comment? Okay, so we will now move into public comment. And so we welcome people to come up to the podium. Is that what we're doing?
Yep, we have 3 minutes.
Oh, 3 minutes. Okay.
Yep, it is a 3 minutes per
Oh, okay.
person.
Perfect.
I don't know that anybody signed up, but
Will we have any more time for discussion or comments after
good, we
that?
can discuss.
I want to bring up one more thing before we get into it. Is that okay?
Yes.
I want to make sure you're the chair. You're the chair.
We're taking over.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The board's vision about alternative education, I think, is really important to dive into for a second. I think they're forward thinking and it's visionary, and this is why. One, and I'm not making a judgment on this, but I want to make sure we're all aware that the voucher school movement, the charter school movement, the private school movement is very real.
Mhm.
It's very real, and it's here. It's in Coos Bay, it's in North Bend, it's in Coos County. I anticipate that it's only going to accelerate because there's some things happening with federal funding. There's things happening even at the state with, and you might be tracking this, Rick, to take money. Mr. Roble might be tracking this, to take money and allow people to use that for portable vouchers. Part of our vision is it's really important that our families and our students have choices within our system. So they walk to choices that we have versus walking out of our district. So for me and us, I want to be able to go to a family who's struggling and maybe we're not meeting their needs. And our administrators, our teachers, us can say, I know that doesn't work, but we can do A, we can do B, we can do C, we can do D. We're getting to a position where we want to get a la carte, right? So we have kids who say, I want to go to ResourceLink, I want to go to Lighthouse, I want to go to brick and mortar all day long. That's a great option. I want to do hybrid for half the day, I want to be in person half the day. We've got to have those options because that is the environment that we're living in. We are living in an Amazon world. People want choices. And if we stay to a status quo model, brick and mortar, then in the long run, we will lose families, right? And they will walk with their feet, they will vote with their feet, and they'll go to places like Winter Lakes. And I'm not saying those are bad options for those families at all, but they will leave our district. And with their vision and some of my background in Alaska, I think we can create a really robust environment that meets the needs of all of our families and our kids. Because when many of us were kids, I'm a Marshfield product of the 90s, right? Great education, great teachers, a decent principal. But that world of I'm going to go to a brick and mortar school for 7 periods a day, that doesn't work for all kids. We have kids who go to destinations who academically, they're really strong. They're not at destinations because they're in credit recovery. They're actually in destinations because some of them want to work part-time. For some of them, it's a family necessity that they work. It's actually survivalhood. Others, and you might have some of these kids, the big high school environment is too big for them. It's too much stimuli. There's just too much going on. They want to be in that smaller environment where there's 15 kids. There isn't as much commotion in the hallways. We all love the prom and the homecoming and all that stuff. Some of our kids, that's not their thing, right? So I just want to I feel like we need to really talk about that, and it's intentional on why we're doing that. It's one, good for kids. because they have choices. It's good for families. And 3, I think beyond this group, I think it's good for our community and our district because, and these people have heard me say this stuff all the time. They're tired of hearing me talk. But what's going to happen in Coos Bay North Bend is people down the road aren't going to choose Coos Bay North Bend because of their legacy families. They're not going to have any connection to Coos Bay North Bend. They're going to come here. They're going to weigh their options. They're going to evaluate. Their grandparents didn't go to the schools, their brothers and sisters. They're going to say, what's the best school district? That's where I'm going to send my kid, right? So we have to position ourselves so they make, and I love the people in North Bend. They're doing a great job. There's good teachers and good administrators. But I want people to come into our district and choose our schools because they're the best schools. So alternative education is, it's really a choice for families, because as administrators, the worst thing that we can be put in a position, I'm gonna get passionate about this. I hate to be put in a position where I can't solve a problem for a family and a kid. I absolutely hate that. Our best situation is when a family comes to us and they say, this isn't working, we unpack it and we say, okay, we could do A, we could do B, we could do C, right? And that's their vision. And I think it's really important because it's gonna position this community for long-term success. So I'm sorry, I'm really passionate about that, but I needed to unpack it for a little bit.
That's great.
Thank you so much.
And our district has been in the forefront of that from the very beginning. So, I mean, we were one of the first charter schools. We've had destinations. We followed South Eugene, where a kid can make their own graduation requirements and write their own plan. Had to be approved by the school district, but it allowed kids to get their own graduation requirements.
Yep.
All those things have been done here.
Yeah, the groundwork has been laid, for sure.
I have a question about that. I've heard you speak before about public charter schools versus private schools.
Oh,
And
yeah.
public charter schools would be under the auspices of the Coos Bay School District.
Yeah.
But then I looked at the website for Little Pirates, and it says it's a private school and they charge tuition. So explain that to me. Is that something that's incorporated within your?
It's public.
It,
You want to?
yeah, it's multifaceted. So Little Pirates is an oddity in our district because we have 2 charter schools. We have Resource Link and Lighthouse that technically fall under the Coos Bay School District when we report. Little Pirates is under us, but we don't claim their ADM. They're not K-12, so we don't get any funding for them. Rather, they are preschool promise grant slots. So we have 72 preschool slots. 3 classes of 18 are funded by the preschool promise grant. And then we do have 18 slots that are tuition based for the people that don't meet the
Income
requirement for preschool promise grant, because it's pretty specific percentage of the federal poverty. And so we created a relatively low cost tuition based slots for 18 kids, but they're not an official public charter school because they're pre-K. So it's 18 slots that we charge $300 a month for those slots.
So it's basically a mixed delivery preschool. So where you get children of different economic statuses in one classroom. Some of those slots, and they're not identified, obviously. So some of those slots could be Minnesota, they could be anywhere from 200% of poverty level or below, reaching ages 3 to 5 in that preschool. And then the tuition spots are the ones, like Marina said, that don't fall into those categories to reach preschool funds funding. So it's a few of those.
The district does not handle that in any capacity other than we invoice for it and we receive the monies. But the recipients of those slots are all determined by SCRAL, the South Coast Regional Early Learning Center, who also operates Little Pirates. So they handle all of the admissions. We purely send out the invoices because it's
The state doesn't see preschool as part of the K-12 system. They're totally separate.
It
They're
changes
on
it.
Preschool is totally
It's just
separate.
like-
No
Sorry.
public school is required to have a preschool program. They are not required. In fact, they aren't even acknowledged as school programs. They
They're
are
not enrolled.
separate because that's preschool.
Okay.
They
That
took out
explains it.
ODE and early learning division and separated them, because they
That
were
is what
together.
Carly has currently been doing. Her current role is about 25 of that, but then the grant.
Right, the grant's done, right?
No, the grant, no, we have swaps for as long as the funding is there at the state level. They pay for a number of slots, and so they pay for 56 of them, whatever 3 times 18 is. At this moment, I can't think. And we
54.
we bill for the other 18, and then we combine. So there's not 3 preschool public slots and 1 tuition-based classrooms. It's just because.
And I think, were we the first preschool, program in the area?
No,
No, Coquillos.
Oh, they have.
North Bend is having.
North Bend's
And-
out in the
and-
90s.
Yeah.
We have had preschool
And
programs
Lutheran.
and young parent programs for a long time in
Yeah.
our district. And they had kids that were, from birth to whatever,
Yeah.
in the young parent program. But it wasn't really considered a preschool program, it was a young parent program.
But that grant funding is.
So we had that one,
yeah.
For as long as
Yeah.
possible. Mhm.
Until it isn't.
Until it isn't, and then the slots would,
And this go, because their payroll doesn't come from our district for this.
I mean, we pay for it and then we get reimbursed for all of our expenses. The only thing that we pay for is 1 teacher, because we have to pay for a teacher out of the general fund to allow for the tuition-based slot.
but it's backfilled by some of the tuition. Not fully paid for, but.
Not fully.
Okay, any other, do we want to go ahead and go to public comment then at this point? Does that sound okay? All right, do we have public comment? Anybody in the room or anybody online would like to speak?
David, did you say we had some online?
No, I just said, I don't know if
Oh.
they didn't sign up.
Okay.
Well, we don't have anybody signed up. Nobody's jumping up to discuss things with us. Okay. All right, so why don't we go ahead and go down to item number 7 on the agenda, which talks about whether or not we want to have a motion to move forward with this this budget as proposed, or whether or not we want to do a follow-up meeting. Those are 2 separate things, right?
2 separate things.
So just kind of what our gauge our feeling at this point. So is there anybody who would like to either schedule a follow-up meeting? A motion for that, for additional work, or do we have a motion for moving forward with approving this budget?
I'd like to make a motion to approve this budget, 25-26 budget as follows: general fund, $45,873,498.36. Special revenue fund, $23,111,440. Debt service fund, $4,719,719.
Sorry, go ahead, go.
Okay. 719,425. Capital projects funds, $3,820,000, and for a total of $77,524,363.36.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second that.
Okay, we have a second. Now do we have discussion? How about we have some discussion? So you wanted to
I do.
make a comment?
I've always advocated for libraries, and I've always, because in my family, we own bookstores. And I did for several years until Amazon came. And my sister and I closed the bookstore. So I do want that part-time position back in the library at the high school. How do I do that?
So
Or
the
full-time.
interesting
Yes.
thing, so the role of this budget committee is to approve the budget by fund and major function. There is no authority to determine staffing levels or what is included within any of those major functions. So you're purely giving the district our allocation to then have our management right to staff as needed. So that's not.
This would be an
budget committee.
unsustainable process if you guys brought it.
No, I understand that, but in the past, we've been able to
Yeah, we've
transfer
always
some
been
money
talking
from the
about
general
this.
fund to allocate for that position.
Well, it's all within the general fund, so there isn't, you wouldn't need to move that funding around, it's all within there. But what is being presented and hopefully approved is major fund by major allocation. So that library services would be within function 222,
Mhm.
but you're approving 2000s as a whole, and it is up to the district as to how we want to
Yeah,
But
we-
you certainly could approach the board and request that we take that up.
we,
Or that
We
we,
just have to be really careful about operations.
or not the board yet.
Yeah, we
Because
are not-
we don't do staffing either,
we
so,
do, yeah, we are not, we can't get into.
I understand that.
yeah.
But
I
in,
even have a
so you're not been doing this since nineties.
Does
So
it
can-
change something?
Can a statement be made that there's, so a member of the committee has a feeling about a certain way, and then, so then that's just given as a recommendation?
It's on record.
Yes, because,
Yeah.
I mean,
So it's on the record?
Can
that
you give
there's
the
feeling.
background of why that position
Well,
did
she
get?
went over that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the hard thing, and I don't wanna, I wanna say this, I wanna be really careful. Any positions that we've had to repurpose or riff, they're not because anybody was doing a poor job. It's not about, and if they were, I couldn't tell you, to be honest, but these decisions are being made based on priorities, right? And just because you absorb something, you repurpose something, doesn't mean it's not a value. It is a value. But we have been tasked by a board to go execute things. And then within that, that's operations. So they've trusted us to go make those decisions based on that guidance. I love libraries, Mrs. Springsteen. I'm a huge fan of libraries. But this process would be unsustainable. I'm gonna be really candid with the group here. If you guys came here and we created an environment where people come and request that we hire positions, bring back positions, that is not the function of this group. The function of this group is to approve the budget and then we run operations.
So this was submitted by the principals of the high school? Does
I'm
he give you,
I'm
the
not gonna
budget
get into the
based on-
mechanics of that.
What I would like to say, I agree with you. I do. I agree with you. I think libraries are very important. I also think PE and movement is important. I like the music. And I know that he's talking about competing priorities. And we have to, as the board, we do the overall picture. As the budget committee, we do the overall budget and functions. I would say though, if you have questions, that this wouldn't be the place to probably talk about the specifics of a specific position, but maybe make a meeting with,
well,
I don't know.
it's
if you
obviously
already
too
have.
late now, but we don't know about this as
No.
a community.
it's not
It's
too
not.
late, as the budget has not been approved, but
It'll go to the board after it comes here.
effectively what's happening in this meeting is that you are approving budget funds and major functions. So all 1,000s, all 2000s as a whole. It is up to the district's discretion as to how that's broken down between support services. So all the 2000s allocation, the 23,111,000, that we give you the breakout of how we have it, but it's under district discretion and management operations as to how we spend that. Because we're approving just the major function. Otherwise, we'd be in the weeds on each separate allocation, and then we could never make adjustments.
So we have that big chunk of money, it's under this. And then how he, him and his administrative team chooses how they're gonna spend it.
I understand
think
that. Don't talk down to me. I understand that. It's been
Okay.
done in the past.
Apologize.
Yeah.
It's been done in the past.
But
It's-
Ms.
I wasn't
Springsteen,
lying
because it
around
was
the
done in the
past,
past,
I'm
doesn't mean it was
I
right.
understand that.
I haven't been a part of this process
No,
with
you
the
haven't.
previous group, so I'm establishing a new baseline. This group is not gonna operate that
So
way.
we can't do it.
However,
You can go on record, and say libraries are important. I believe libraries are important. But what this group is not gonna do is come in with something and say, I want you guys to repurpose that position, I want you to bring it back. Because if we start that environment, we will never be able to make budgetary decisions, and then this environment will become hyper-political. It will become hyper-political. And so
Well, kind of already is.
Well, I apologize, Bella, I was talking down to you, I wasn't trying to. I try to explain to anybody that's online or anywhere.
Sure, so we'll make note of the recommendation of the committee member. And then also there's been an invitation that there can be discussion beyond this committee, because that wouldn't be the appropriate place to be able to make that type of change. But maybe if there's a larger number approved, maybe there's still the idea that there could be influence as citizens to be able to communicate with the district that there's a sentiment that instead of 25,000 for books, we want 30,000 for books, or, that sort of thing. We can get into, oh, you like that one? Well, I was excited about the 25,000. So on the plus side of it, there's 25,000 allotted for books. And so I was really excited about that. And I could see where maybe a 0.5 on the library person, maybe it's because enrollment's down. I don't know. So going off what is said here is that there's trust that the administration is making those decisions.
I tend to agree, and I don't think the budget place is the place to make a decision about an individual position that was cut. I do appreciate the fact that all of the positions that are being cut have been absorbed by retirements and others. And that's about doing things on a humanitarian level. And you mentioned at the very beginning, I have been here when we've had to cut and we didn't do that. I have been here when we've cut and we tried to do that. And I've been here when we had to cut so much that it didn't matter. It was disastrous. So I've been through all those things, and I do recognize that our class sizes are really, I would have loved anyone with class sizes when I was the principal. We didn't have those kind of class sizes. I think that as time goes on, personally, again, I think that if we're going to have AP seminar as a required graduation requirement, and as was mentioned in the meeting the other day with all of our kids talking about forensics or debate, that research is number one thing that they mentioned over and over again. Well, libraries are the place you do research. I will say that. And truthfully, without other people in the library, it will not be the place that it needs to be the academic hub of an educational system, which I believe they are. Libraries are the academic hub. So my goal is to figure out as time goes on how those positions get funded in the future. I agree. That's his job. He has to go talk to all those people and figure out where he's going to put people. As a board member, I will work hard to find resources and do things because I agree with you that, and I was not a reader. I couldn't read till I was in sixth. So I was not was not my skill set. I went to libraries to check out the largest book I could find, so it looked like I knew what I was doing.
Well, libraries are different now. You're talking Chromebooks and it's
All I did is
online.
pick the largest book. So yeah, now it's Chromebooks. But the reality is, it is as my son, who became a lawyer, pointed out, it is the library where he could walk in and get any book that was in a library anywhere in the world. And he did that often. Went in and found weird books from all over the country, and they got mailed to the library, and he got to do his initial research. My daughter, who's a playwright, that's all she does is research. That's her life. And so it is the hub of education in the long run. And I think if we're going to make sure that we have an academic school, we have to make sure that we have the programs that make that successful for all those kids. So I appreciate what you said, and I think that as time goes on, we need to continue to look at that and make sure that we figure out how to make it work. But
Well, there's gonna be a gap, and you want these AP classes at the high school, but you've got this gap of kids that aren't gonna get it.
right, it's a lot of different kinds of things. I have watched libraries go from where you just went. Yes, we both know Millicom.
Yeah,
Where the process was to buy new books and keep them away from the kids because they
Right.
mess them up.
yeah.
To libraries where the library was going down the hall every morning because the teachers had requested a packet of books and materials. So I really, really understand what you're saying and want to deal. I agree with Justin, this is not the place to have that conversation, but we need to work on it. And we need to work on finding ways to get the kinds of things that we need to have for all kids to be as successful as they can be. And I will also tell you that kids coming to school, they come to school because of relationships they build with people in the schools. That's much more than any of the other stuff, and Justin's talked about that too. And I will tell you that for many of our kids, when I was principal, they came to school because we had people who worked in the cafeteria, who gave them an extra sandwich, who talked to
Slice of
them. And
pizza.
gave them time. They were people who, on the bus driver talked to them and treated them in a way that made them want to come back the next day. And oftentimes, those are our classified people that are making those relationships and developing those kinds of things. And they are in the community in ways that our teachers and others are not in the community. They have tentacles that go out, those classified people, to places that we don't always think about and draw people back in. So exceptionally important. We need to figure out how to make as many of them as we can. And we will, as a board member, we will take your considerations as we thought very
That's
seriously.
all I can do.
Well, and I'm glad you said that, because that person is gonna go to Millicoma, because we're gonna try and do the humanistic thing through cuts, doesn't mean that we can't reconsider something during the next budget, right? That we can always, we just can't do it now. That's my point, but we can reconsider down the line.
Any other discussion?
I wasn't gonna say anything, but I'm going to.
You're welcome.
I really appreciated your talk about everything and all of the new things that you're adding, and then your takeaway. And full disclosure, my daughter is the head librarian. She's a librarian at Marshfield. She's the district librarian. She teaches classes, the most important of which is research, how to get access to the information the kids need. She is the head of the OBOB program, Oregon Battle of Books, one of the best programs I've ever been introduced to. If anybody's ever been able to see that,
Amazing.
she's not going to be able to do that. And I just think people should know that. Full disclosure, my daughter. Joe said you were a good guy. He did.
Known Joe a long time.
Oh,
Yeah.
you'd love him.
Okay, any other discussion? Do we have, if not,
It's been moved and seconded.
it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed, say nay.
Nay,
Okay, so do we need to do a count to make sure we have, or do we have majority?
Probably vote individually, I would ask.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so, we'll just go around the table then. So I'll start, and so I vote aye that we will, approve the budget as, moved by Mrs. Brick, sorry.
I vote nay for this meeting.
Nay?
nay.
Aye.
Aye.
And I.
So we have 2 opposed, and majority carries, correct? Okay, so we will go ahead and move forward with that the budget has been approved. We have another recommended motion. Oh, yes, Mr. Copeland.
I will move. that we approve
Oh, on
the
the next one? Okay. So we,
tax rate of $4 and 0.5276 per thousand of assessed value of the assessed to be assessed in support of the general fund. That 4.001.909 of the general obligation bond levy in the debt service fund for the principal and interest.
Second.
Hopefully.
okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any discussion about this? Okay. All in favor, aye? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay,
We have abstentions.
we have abstentions. Okay, so we, one,
Sure.
okay, 2, we have 2 members abstaining. Do we want to go around the table so we have an
Sure.
exact
Sure.
count? Okay, so myself, aye.
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 And I.
Okay, so we have our 2 members abstaining. Okay, is there anything else for the good of the order?
Thank you so much.
Anything else anybody wants to discuss? We'll adjourn and then we'll have room for discussion afterwards. We'll talk about our favorite books. And I mean that with seriousness. Okay, thank you, everybody. We'll
Thank you.
adjourn.
Yeah.